Welcome to Strong Bible Channel, where knowledge and wisdom are strength. Why does God allow bad things to happen to good people and babies? I feel as if this question trips up many believers and even causes some to lose faith or cast doubt on their beliefs. So I just wanted to make a quick video addressing the inevitable question that all believers will hear at some point. Why does God allow bad things to happen to good people and babies? It is a logical question, so I wouldn't be so quick to dismiss the person making the query. However, I do think you should make an attempt to distinguish if this question is being asked in hopes of hearing a legitimate answer to ease their soul, or is it an attempt to disprove God and cast doubt on your faith or someone else's who may be listening to the conversation? If it is a gotcha type of question, maybe I wouldn't be too detailed with the answer, because a person who doesn't want to believe will not accept any answer you provide. It may be better not to argue with someone who has no desire to entertain faith-based answers or receive any biblical knowledge whatsoever. As it is written in Matthew chapter 7, "Give not that which is holy unto the dogs, neither cast ye your pearls before swine, lest they trample them under their feet, and turn again and rend you." So, as I see it, there are two answers to this age-old question. Why does God allow bad things to happen? The first, much shorter answer is simply faith. If God were to stop all bad things from happening via miracles or divine intervention, then there would be no reason to doubt his existence. Everyone would be a believer. Therefore, faith could not be tested. This would ultimately negate the entire reason we are here in the first place. The second, longer, more involved answer will take a bit of knowledge and understanding of God's overall plan. Sadly, that plan is widely unknown to people today. However, if they would take the time to learn of it, then another age-old question would also be answered with this knowledge. The conundrum of, why are we here? As a quick bonus, I will give you the short answer to that question as well. Are you ready for it? It's a test. Yes, that is right. This short life on earth that we all live is a test. A test of whether we choose to follow God and do good, or do we follow Satan and do evil. We were all born innocent in this world, with any memories of the first earth age erased. Now don't lose me here. I will explain that phrase momentarily. In fact, the explanation of the three earth ages will serve to answer the next logical question you may be asking at this point. Why are we being tested? So let's step back and take just a moment to understand the three earth ages. If you've never heard of that phrase before, then we can more precisely answer the question, why does God allow bad things to happen to good people and innocent babies? I realize three earth ages may sound foreign or maybe even mystical to some of you if you aren't familiar with that subject. Although, I will tell you, understanding this concept will open up much of God's Word that may have been confusing to you before. A quick summary before we turn to the text is that there are three earth ages. The age that was and is no more. The second earth age is the one that we live in now, on this material plane. The third earth age is yet to come. The first earth age is mentioned in a verse that most people are familiar with. In fact, it's the very first verse in the Bible, Genesis chapter 1, verse 1. In the beginning, God created the heaven and the earth. Did you notice this verse does not say when God created the heaven and the earth? It was obviously millions of years ago. We can document that with fossils. There is no conflict between science and the Bible, if you have understanding. Notice that period after the earth in the verse. Heaven and earth were created, period. Guess what? There is an entire earth age which existed between that first verse and the second. Some call this the gap theory. Let's continue. Now the second verse in Genesis becomes very interesting. Genesis chapter 1 verse 2. And the earth was without form and void, and darkness was upon the face of the deep, and the Spirit of God moved upon the face of the waters. I grant you, it would be natural to read over this detail and read those two verses together as God created the heaven and the earth, and it was void without form. But stop to think about that for just a moment. Does it make sense that God created the earth, and yet it is void and without form? How can it be void and without form when it just said God created it? That doesn't make any sense. Now, let me just interject here. If there's ever a time when you feel that the Bible doesn't make any sense, it's you are either missing something or possibly confused by the translation. This happens to be one of those times where a word should be translated differently to make this second verse not only make sense, but reveal a huge part of God's overall plan right from the start here in Genesis. The first word we should examine more closely is was. That word is haya in Hebrew. It is a primitive root. According to the Strong's Exhaustive Concordance of the Bible, it is word H1961. And really it means to be, become, come to pass, exist, happen, fall out. Now, if we were to read that second verse as the earth became without form and void, it begins to make much more sense. After all, God doesn't create anything void. Isaiah chapter 45 verse 18. For thus saith the Lord that created the heavens, God himself that formed the earth and made it. He hath established it. He created it not in vain. He formed it to be inhabited. I am the Lord, and there is none else. So the word vain in Isaiah 45:18, in fact, is the same word in Genesis chapter 1 verse 2 as without form. That Hebrew word is tohu. It's H8414 in the Strong's Concordance. It means nothingness or emptiness. So this verse proclaims with a degree of certainty, God created the earth not in vain. God does not make anything empty, void, or without form. Now, armed with that knowledge, those first two verses in Genesis become much more clear. God created the heaven and the earth. Then the earth became void. So you may ask, well, why did it become void? Well, we'll find the answer to that question just a little later. Let's first continue to document the three world ages. Peter discusses the three world ages in 2 Peter chapter 3. Did you know the entire chapter is dedicated to the three world ages? It is one of those things that you won't see if you were unaware of the concept to begin with. In verse 6 of chapter 3, Peter describes how the first earth age perished. 2 Peter chapter 3 verse 6, whereby the world that then was, being overflowed with water, perished. Now don't confuse this with the flood of Noah. That isn't speaking of Noah's flood. Not everything perished at that time. The dove that was let go by Noah returned with an olive branch. So there were olive trees. You know how long an olive tree takes to grow? It's a very long time. Not everything was destroyed in that flood. You can see this in Genesis chapter 8 verse 11. And the dove came into him in the evening, and lo, in her mouth was an olive leaf plucked off. So Noah knew that the waters were abated from the earth. Now in 2 Peter chapter 3 verse 7, he speaks of the second world age. But the heavens and the earth, which are now, by the same word are kept in store, reserved unto fire against the day of judgment and perdition of ungodly men. That doesn't require much explanation. You may have heard the world will end in fire the next time. Well, this is partly probably where that comes from. Judgment Day will end this world age. Not the world, mind you, but the age. And the ungodly will perish before the third world age begins. In verse 13, he speaks of the third world age. 2 Peter chapter 3, verse 13. Nevertheless, we, according to his promise, look for new heavens and a new earth, wherein dwelleth righteousness. A new heavens and a new earth. In the new age, righteousness will be achieved, unlike here. The ungodly are not there. Let's turn to Revelations chapter 21 for more confirmation. The book of Revelations, chapter 21, verse 1. And I saw a new heaven and a new earth, for the first heaven and the first earth were passed away, and there was no more sea. That last part about no more sea is very interesting, but that's another topic for a different day. How did God end the first earth age? It was written, God shook the foundation. It is implied the change was sudden and furious. 2 Samuel chapter 22, verse 8. Then the earth shook and trembled. The foundations of heaven moved and shook because he was wroth. The shaking of the earth's foundation is also mentioned in Psalms chapter 18, verse 7, chapter 68, verse 8, chapter 77, verse 18, as well as Hebrews chapter 12, verse 26, for extra documentation. In Jeremiah, the Lord recounts when he turned the earth to void and without form. Jeremiah chapter 4, verse 22. For my people is foolish. They have not known me. They are sottish children, and they have none understanding. They are wise to do evil, but to do good they have no knowledge. Verse 23. I beheld the earth, and lo, it was without form and void, and the heavens, and they had no lights. Obviously, this is after there were children. He just said the children were foolish and quick to do evil. And then he beheld the earth, and lo, it was without form and void. Continues in Jeremiah 24. I beheld the mountains, and lo, they trembled, and all the hills moved lightly. 25. I beheld, and lo, there was no man, and all the birds of the heavens were fled. 26. I beheld, and lo, the fruitful place was a wilderness, and all the cities thereof were broken down at the presence of the Lord, and by his fierce anger. So God is saying that his children are stupid. They're wise to do evil. That must have been a great disappointment when 1/3 of them decided to follow Satan. Notice in verse 25, God says there was no man to behold. Again, that's not Noah's flood, where there was an ark with at least 8 people aboard. There was more than likely even more than that, and it's possible that that flood didn't even cover the entire earth. But again, that is actually a different topic for another day. So in verse 26, it is revealed that there were even cities which were destroyed. That's interesting, is it not? The rebellion caused God to end that age with fierce anger. So you may be wondering if there's any sort of physical proof that this occurrence took place, right? There should be. Well, spoiler alert, there is. Aside from the abundant mysteries that man has contemplated for centuries, there also exist snapshots of this change. The sudden change from the shaking may be evidenced in science by several mammoths found in Alaska and Siberia with buttercups and other grass in their mouths, not even swallowed yet. This may suggest that death and the subsequent freezing could have been sudden. The best early documented case of a mostly full Beresovka mammoth was in 1901. Food and grass was found in the animal's mouth, not yet swallowed. I'll leave a link to the Wikipedia page that mentions this in the description. What is more, some of these creatures were found in geographical locations that should not have been able to support the food supply needed for herds of grazing animals such as mammoths, especially during the extremely cold parts of the Ice Age. I'll leave a link to another quick read on the frozen mammoth discovery. It's entitled Mystery of the Mammoth and the Buttercups. The article is from the Geophysical Institute at the University of Alaska in Fairbanks. In short, a nearly intact Beresovka mammoth was found so well preserved, the flesh was still edible. The animal was flash frozen about 10,000 years ago. Buttercups were again found in its teeth. Another mammoth was found recently in Siberia in 2013. This animal's flesh was so fresh that it actually bled when it was cut with a knife. That mammoth was nicknamed Buttercup. I'll leave a link to that article in the description as well. So another mystery that presents itself here is, how were some of these animals so intact that predators did not consume the carcass? Well, if you're biblically literate, you understand the catable or the foundation being shook by God suddenly. There is also speculation that if the earth was not tilted and true north was the same as magnetic north, no matter where you were on the planet, the entire world's climate would be somewhat mild. What kind of power would it take to tilt the world? Certainly a shaking of foundations would do it. Of course, it should be understood that these are only believers' explanations. An atheist would abruptly dismiss all of these claims. For instance, the prevailing theory for the mammoths being flash frozen is that somehow they slipped off of a cliff into a mud pit or quicksand or maybe even a lake, during an ice age, mind you. They sunk and were subsequently completely covered with mud or something else very, very quickly, thereby mummifying these specimens. Now, I suppose that might be a satisfactory explanation for maybe one discovery, perhaps two, but that theory, at least in my opinion, loses more credibility and likeliness with each new discovery of intact mammoth remains that are found. Another clue in our mystery lies in Ashfall Fossil Beds State Park in Nebraska. Several fossils were discovered there, species believed to be native to Africa only. The species found included rhinos, camels, and three-toed horses. The remains are said to be preserved around a watering hole, which was covered in ash from a sudden volcanic eruption. What do you suppose African animals like that are doing in North America? Perhaps this is evidence of Pangea. Africa does look like it might fit very well if you place it up to the eastern coast of the United States. Almost like puzzle pieces. It's almost like the Earth's foundations were suddenly shook by some extremely strong power, and the continents broke apart and the entire world was shifted, so that true north is no longer magnetic north, depending where you are on the planet. I mentioned the mysteries which we pondered earlier. I'm referring to mysteries such as the pyramids in Egypt, ancient technologies that have been discovered that seem too advanced for the time, structures, paintings, pictures, and writings that no one can explain. All these things begin to make a little more sense when you are armed with the knowledge of the first Earth Age. What is more, is you were there. We all existed in the first Earth Age. We were in a spiritual body then, as opposed to our physical one we have now. But we were there. Some refer to this theory as preexistence. I don't fully agree with that term, though. It implies that maybe we stopped existing at one point and then became to exist again. That clearly isn't the case. So if you look back in Genesis again, God would say, "Let us make man in our image." Genesis chapter 1, verse 26. And God said, "Let us make man in our image, after our likeness, and let them have dominion over the fish of the sea, and over the fowl of the air, and over the cattle, and over all the earth, and over every creeping thing that creepeth upon the earth." Who was he talking to in that verse? He was talking to us. I've heard it said that he was talking to himself. Does that make any sense to you? We are made in God's image. The Lord knew the trials of life in the flesh. He understood the difficulties his children were to face. This also explains why it pained God to make man in flesh. Genesis chapter 6, verse 6. And it repented the Lord that he had made man on earth, and it grieved him at his heart. He never wanted this for us. He felt the pain and the sorrow being in the flesh would cause his children. He knew that bad things were going to happen to innocent babies and good people. He didn't want it. That's why it pained him and grieved his heart. Want even more biblical references for us being around in that first Earth Age? Why do you suppose it was written that God hated Esau in his mother's womb? Look at Malachi chapter 1 verse 3. And I hated Esau and laid his mountains and his heritage waste for the dragons of the wilderness. Romans chapter 9 verse 11. For the children being not yet born, neither have done any good or evil, innocent, that the purpose of God, according to the election, might stand, not of works, but of him that calleth. Verse 12. And it was said unto her, the elder shall serve the younger. The elder was Esau, the younger was Jacob. It is written, Jacob have I loved, but Esau have I hated. It might surprise some of you to learn that God does hate. Well, be that as it may, obviously he does. It is written. So what reason would God have to hate a tiny baby that wasn't even born yet? God hated Esau because he knew Esau's character from the first earth age. Esau didn't care about his heritage when he was here. He sold his birthright to Jacob for a bowl of stew. Only God knows what Esau did in the first world age. You could see in Genesis chapter 25 verse 33, and Jacob said, swear to me this day. And he sware unto him. And he sold his birthright unto Jacob. 34. Then Jacob gave Esau bread and pottage of lentils. And he did eat and drink, and rose up and went his way. Thus Esau despised his birthright. The Lord would also remark that he chose Jeremiah before he was in his mother's womb. Jeremiah chapter 1 verse 5. Before I formed thee in the belly, I knew thee. And before thou camest forth out of the womb, I sanctified thee, and I ordained thee a prophet unto the nations. Why would he do that? He chose Jeremiah because he knew Jeremiah's character from the first earth age as well. We were there. We were all there. But we lost all memory of it when we were born from the water into this earth age. It had to be this way if we were going to be properly tested. It is important that we have reason to doubt of our Father's existence. Otherwise, it wouldn't be a proper test, would it? In the book of Romans, it is also written how God chose the elect before this earth age. The language used is foreknew and predestined. Romans chapter 8, verse 29. For whom he did foreknow, he also did predestinate to be conformed to the image of his Son, that he might be the firstborn among many brethren. Verse 30. Moreover, whom he did predestinate, them he also called. And whom he called, them he also justified. And whom he justified, them he also glorified. He was able to choose the elect because he already knew their merit. They had already proven themselves in the first earth age. To be predestined or foreknew is quite intentional language. Hard to argue with that. There are not many ways to interpret those terms. It should be starting to become obvious to you that there was a first earth age by now. Now, in case you're still not convinced, let us look to the book of Ephesians. Paul writes, God has chosen us before the foundation of the world. Ephesians chapter 1, verse 4. According as he hath chosen us in him, before the foundation of the world, that we should be holy and without blame before him in love. And we could also read how that we have no remembrance of that first world age. This is written in the book of Ecclesiastes. Ecclesiastes chapter 1 verse 10. Is there anything whereof it may be said, see, this is new? It hath been already of old time, which was before us. Next verse 11. There is no remembrance of former things, neither shall there be any remembrance of things that are to come with those that shall come after. Notice in verse 11, not only does it exclaim, we have no remembrance of former things, but also we will have no remembrance of things that are to come. Allow me to put forth yet another opinion, which isn't documented anywhere in the Word of God, but it does make sense. I believe the Lord will wipe our memories clean from all sorrow we have experienced. It is written that there are no tears in heaven, which to me means that the bad things that have happened to you must be erased. God has used this method in the here and now to wipe our memories of the first world age. So it is very possible he uses the technique again in the world age to come. Also, look to the book of Job. When God finally spoke to Job, it wasn't until the 38th chapter. He asked Job where he was when God created the universe. Job chapter 38, verse 4. Where wast thou when I laid the foundations of the earth? Declare, if thou hast understanding. Verse 5. Who hath laid the measures thereof, if thou knowest? Or hath stretched the line upon it? Verse 6. Whereupon are the foundations thereof fastened? Or who laid the cornerstone thereof? Verse 7. When the morning stars sang together, and all the sons of God shouted for joy. Look in verse 7. God says all the morning stars sang, and the sons of God shouted for joy. He's speaking about that first earth age, when the very foundations were laid. We were with him in that earth age, after creation, and very, very happy. Okay, now that I'm satisfied that we have adequately laid out the case for the first earth age, let's answer that question, why did God destroy the first earth age? This one's a little easier to answer. It was because Satan was prideful and led a rebellion in the first world age. He wasn't happy just being a cherub guarding the throne of God. He wanted to rule as God. Ezekiel chapter 28, verse 14. This is God speaking to Satan. Thou art the anointed cherub that covereth, and I have set thee so. Thou wast upon the holy mountain of God. Thou hast walked up and down in the midst of the stones of fire. Verse 15. Thou wast perfect in thy ways from the day that thou wast created, till iniquity was found in thee. Does it surprise you? Satan was a good servant of God at one point. Perfect in thy ways. He worked his way up all the way to be the anointed cherub that covereth, meaning he protected the throne. That's how trusted he was. It was pride that eventually led to Satan's downfall. Satan, or Lucifer, wanted to sit on that throne instead of guard it. He wanted to be God, and he still wants to be. Ezekiel chapter 28, verse 9. Wilt thou yet say before him that slayeth thee, I am God? But thou shalt be a man, and no God, in the hand of him that slayeth thee. Sounds like a death sentence. God can justly destroy Satan and his followers because they killed Jesus first. This is told in the book of Hebrews. Hebrews chapter 2, verse 14. For as much then as the children are partakers of the flesh and blood, he also himself likewise took part of the same, that through death he might destroy him that had the power of death, that is, the devil. They killed him first, so now he could kill them, and it's just. Heaven only knows why he would want to be God. I couldn't imagine anyone wanting that job. We should be tremendously grateful to our Father for all he does and endures. Just imagine being responsible for all of creation, billions of souls, listening to prayers, sitting in judgment, not to mention the fact that time does not exist to God. So if you think about it, everything that's ever happened, everything happening now, and everything that will ever happen is all going on at the same time for him. Try to wrap your head around that for a moment. This is actually implied in the name of God that he gave to Moses when he inquired, Who should I say sent me? And the Lord responded to tell them, I am that I am. However, the name really suggests all tenses of existence. So it is I was that I was, I am that I am, and I will be that I will be. Just mind-boggling to even consider that. All things which exist. They don't exist of or on their own. They only exist by sharing his existence. So, to back up, Satan decides to lead a revolution. He goes to war against God. And more than that, he manages to convince 1/3 of all the children to follow him against God in a war. Revelations chapter 12, verse 4. And his tail drew the 1/3 part of the stars of heaven, those are the children, and did cast them to the earth. And the dragon stood before the woman, which was ready to be delivered, for to devour her child as soon as it was born. Stars are represented to be the children, and 1/3 were deceived. This proves just how convincing he must be to turn a whole 1/3 of God's kids to follow him to war against God. I mean, talk about betting on the wrong horse. Of course, Satan loses that war because God. So now, the Lord has a decision to make after that. What is he to do with all these children who followed Satan? Remember, the Lord is merciful. And naturally, he doesn't want to destroy 1/3 of his children. Could you imagine what it would take to destroy your own child? Say you have 3 kids, and one goes against you. Most of us would never even consider such an action. Well, guess what? It's even harder for God than it would be for us. And we are all his children proper. Our earthly children, the children that we bear here, they don't belong to us. They belong to God. We're just borrowing them for just a little time while we're here. I feel it's just so that we can know just a portion of the love that he feels for us. You know how you love your children, and they're not even really yours. Imagine how much more God loves you as his child. And then when you consider that we were all most likely created at the same time in the first earth age, then that would mean that we are all really the same age as each other. The point being, it's even harder for God to destroy his children than it would be for us. This really needs to make you stop and think just a moment of how much the Lord, your Father, loves and cares for you. So God, in his infinite wisdom, he comes up with another plan. He figures that instead of destroying 1/3 of his children, he destroys the first earth age. He then creates this second earth age as a test for us all. We are to be born here innocent and wiped out of our memories from the first earth age. This way, we can see who is good and who is bad. We get to choose our actions here, and the devil, or Satan, is allowed to rule in this time. He's not physically here now, but he will be one day according to the book of Revelations. However, his spirit rules this earth age, and he is allowed to test us. Just read that book of Job if you want to see the horrible things he can do. So any place that is ruled by Satan is going to be imperfect and full of sorrow, to say the least. Not only does Satan rule this world age, but accidents take place as well here. Jesus spoke of the tower in Siloam, which fell and killed 18 people. In Luke, Jesus asked, "Do you think those 18 were the most wicked people?" He answered the question himself, letting them know that they were not. It was just an accident, and those people were at the wrong place at the wrong time. That's in Luke chapter 13, verse 4. It reads, "Or those 18, upon whom the tower in Siloam fell, and slew them. Think ye that they were sinners above all men that dwelt in Jerusalem?" Verse 5, "I tell you, nay, but except ye repent, ye shall all likewise perish." So bad things happen. We certainly don't help matters either. Humans are fully capable of ruining things without Satan's help. We are also prideful and greedy, lustful, and deceitful, among many other things as well. We hurt others. We pollute and cause disease. And we cause pain in one way or another. And God allows this, as much as it pains him, because in the end, it is necessary to separate the good wheat from the bad tares. Take a look at that parable in the book of Matthew about the tares in the field. It's Matthew chapter 13, verse 38. That's when Jesus explains the parable to the disciples. The field is the world. The good seed are the children of the kingdom, but the tares are the children of the wicked one. Verse 39. The enemy that sowed them is the devil. The harvest is the end of the world, and the reapers are the angels. Verse 40. As therefore the tares are gathered and burned in the fire, so shall it be in the end of this world. He didn't mince words there. He explained it exactly how that parable was. If you didn't know, tares are very bad. They look just like wheat, but they're inedible. So an enemy mixed the tares in with the good seed to ruin the harvest. And you can't tell the difference between them just by looking easily. Jesus is explaining this parable to his disciples here. He doesn't mince words, and he does explain exactly what this parable represents to all who see. The devil is the enemy who poisoned humanity with his evil children. Now, he doesn't create souls, okay? These are the children that follow him. They desire to harm the children of God, and even God himself. The harvest is when they will be sorted out. That's not at this time or in this world age. It is at the end of this world age. The evil ones are gathered and burned in fire, never to be seen or heard from again. It isn't until the third and final earth age when all will be peaceful and not a tear shed. So if we go to Revelations chapter 21, verse 3, and I heard a great voice out of heaven, saying, Behold, the tabernacle of God is with men, and he will dwell with them, and they shall be his people, and God himself shall be with them, and be their God. Verse 4, and God shall wipe away all tears from their eyes, and there shall be no more death, neither sorrow nor crying, neither shall there be any more pain, for the former things are passed away. Verse 5, and he that sat upon the throne said, Behold, I make all things new. And he said unto me, Write, for these words are true and faithful. Did you catch that? No more pain and no more sorrow. This is the eternity. God will rule, and all will be well. The short time that we have in this world age is a flash in the pan, or a grain of sand on a never-ending beach compared to the eternity, which is coming in the third world age. However, this short time is yet so important. It serves as a test, if you will. Do you love God, or do you love the ways of Satan in this earth? Will you follow him and his commandments, the Lord, or will you fall prey to the desires and the seductions of the ways of the devil? Again, that choice is yours. So, the answer to our burning question, why does God allow bad things to happen to good people and innocent babies, has been revealed throughout the entirety of this video. The short answer again is faith. The longer answer takes understanding of God's overall plan and the three world ages and Satan's rebellion. To summarize that answer in different terms, God allows Satan to reign over this world age. This is his time to properly test the children of God. Bad things happen here, but those things will cease to exist in the eternity. This is not our real body or form. It is the soul which you must be concerned for. Matthew chapter 10, verse 28. And fear not them which kill the body, but are not able to kill the soul, but rather fear him which is able to destroy both soul and body in hell. The anguish present in this world age is why I believe life is so short for us here. Our Father really doesn't want us to hurt for too long. My opinion, although it's not written anywhere, is that when a young baby expires while it's very young, still in the age of innocence, it is a type of kindness. I think that that particular soul is just too good to go through the trials of this world. And the Lord already knows their heart. So that innocent child is spared the walk in this field of the second earth age. It was too good. Although God has allowed us some pleasures on earth so that we may know what it is to be good and prosperous. He is around and he's available. Should you seek him, seek and ye shall find. Matthew chapter 7, verse 7. Ask, and it shall be given to you. Seek, and ye shall find. Knock, and it shall be opened unto you. Verse 8. For everyone that asketh receiveth, and he that seeketh findeth, and to him that knocketh it shall be opened. You see, the Lord has written you a letter to explain all things that have happened and will happen in the future, if you care to read it. That, my friends, is another choice which is left up to you. I sincerely hope these words have served to give you some peace, confidence, and faith when faced with questions like, why does God allow bad things to happen to babies? Now, do yourself this favor, if you care to. Tell your Father that you love him and ask for wisdom and knowledge. If you do that earnestly, he will answer. May God bless you. Thank you so much for watching this video. Please give this video a like and a comment. It really makes a world of difference to the algorithms of YouTube. You could also find the short ebook on this topic on Amazon.com. A link will be in the description to that ebook. It is much the same as this video, but you can go there and at least check it out, as I believe that even helps with the algorithms as well. If you were to go to Amazon and either purchase or borrow that inexpensive ebook, it would serve to help and support this channel immensely. I would greatly appreciate it. If you do end up getting the ebook and reading it, please remember to rate it and leave a comment on there as well. It's so important to get that kind of engagement on sites like Amazon and YouTube. That's how they recommend your videos or books. I also have a Patreon page for the Strong Bible channel. If you should feel led to contribute, and only do so if you feel like we have helped you in some way, and you would like to see more videos such as this, go ahead and check it out. I'll put a link in the description as well. And contribute only if you feel that you have been led to do so. Thank you all, and God bless. Strong Bible Channel, where knowledge and wisdom are strength.